Iphioma stood outside the glass tower, clutching the brown envelope that held her entire future. The security guard had already waved her in, and now she was riding an elevator that smelled like power and money. She rehearsed answers meant for a junior clerk interview, unaware she had walked into the executive floor by mistake. The doors opened to a silent boardroom. Long table, dark suits, cold eyes. At the head sat CEO Adrian Cole, his presence sharp enough to slice air. Iphioma froze. Every instinct screamed wrong room, wrong life, wrong destiny. "What position are you here for?" Adrian asked, voice flat. Her mouth went dry. Laughter rippled softly from executives. She tried to apologize, but words tangled. Finally, she straightened her shoulders. "Sir, I'm here because I need work," she said. "I studied economics. I'm poor, not stupid." The room stiffened. Someone scoffed. Adrian leaned back, studying her like a puzzle. "You interrupted a billion-dollar meeting," he said. "Why shouldn't I throw you out?" Pain burned behind her eyes. "You can," she replied quietly. "But you won't remember me. If you let me speak, you might." Silence fell heavy. Adrian's jaw tightened. No one spoke to him like that. He waved his hand. Everyone out. Gasps. Chairs scraped. Executives filed out, stunned. Iphioma's heart pounded as the doors shut behind them. "You have 5 minutes," Adrian said. "Convince me." She spoke about markets, about people behind numbers, about hunger teaching efficiency. Words poured from a place deeper than fear. Adrian listened, expression unreadable. When she finished, her knees shook. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'll leave now." "Sit," he ordered. She hesitated. "I didn't say you were dismissed," Adrian added, eyes narrowing with something unfamiliar. For the first time in years, curiosity stirred in his chest. And Iphioma realized this interview was no longer a mistake. Outside the room, the executives whispered, sensing disruption. Inside, the air shifted, heavy with consequence. Neither of them understood it yet, but a single wrong step had tilted 2 lives. Power had noticed hunger. I said noticed fire. Somewhere between fear and ambition, a door had opened, and neither would walk through it unchanged again. The moment waited, silent and patient, watching both hearts race toward choices neither could escape from destiny tonight, without permission or mercy, forever. Adrian watched the door long after the executives left. The silence pressed down on the room, thick and dangerous. Iphioma sat stiffly, hands folded, waiting to be dismissed like every other disappointment in her life. "You walked into the wrong room," Adrian said at last. "Yes, sir," she replied. "But I spoke the truth." Truth. The word irritated him. People lied to him for salaries, for contracts, for survival. Yet this girl had nothing and still stood unbowed. He rose slowly, circling the table. "Do you know what happens to people who embarrass me?" She swallowed. "They leave. They disappear," he corrected. "Careers end." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "Then let mine end standing." Something cracked. Adrian stopped walking. Years of ice had trained him to dominate, not hesitate. "You're brave," he said coolly. "Or foolish." "Both," she answered. A knock interrupted them. The HR director peeked in, eyes wide. "Sir, should we escort her out?" "No," Adrian said sharply. "Bring me her file." "I don't have one," HR whispered. She wasn't scheduled. Adrian's gaze returned to Iphioma. "Name?" Iphioma Okoye. "Education?" "Federal University." "First class." The HR director blinked. Adrian nodded once. "Prepare a temporary contract." Shock rippled through the hallway beyond the glass. Whispers ignited. The CO never bent rules. Iphioma's chest tightened. "Sir, I don't understand." "You will," he replied. "You start today." HR hesitated. "Under which department?" Adrian didn't look away from her. "Mine." The word landed like thunder. Iphioma stood abruptly. "That's impossible. People will talk." "They always do," Adrian said. "You'll sit outside my office. You'll observe. You'll speak only when asked." "And if I fail?" she asked. "Then you leave quietly," he said. "But if you succeed," he let the sentence die. Outside, executives watched through glass walls, stunned. Some smiled with envy. Others sharpened knives. Ifioma felt the weight of every eye as she followed HR out. Behind her, Adrian remained still, pulse quickening. He told himself this was curiosity, nothing more. Yet deep inside, something restless had awakened. As the elevator doors closed on her shaking reflection, Ifioma realized survival had just become more. Above, in the silent boardroom, Adrian stared at the empty chair she had occupied, unsettled by a presence that lingered like a question he could not silence anymore. Tonight, Ifioma arrived before sunrise, shoes polished thin, heart pounding louder than the lobby fountain. She took the seat outside Adrian Cole's office, ignoring curious glances, repeating instructions like prayers. Observe. Speak only when asked. By 8 o'clock, whispers slithered through corridors. People stared, smiled tightly, or turned away. Power had a smell, and today it surrounded her. Her first test came quickly. An assistant dropped files deliberately, eyes sharp with challenge. Ifioma knelt, gathered papers, and noticed errors nobody had flagged. She corrected numbers quietly, returned the folder, and said nothing. Minutes later, Adrian called for that same report. Silence followed. The assistant's face drained when Adrian asked who fixed it. By midday, rumors hardened. They said she was reckless, connected, dangerous. One woman hissed that poverty should know its place. Ifioma locked herself in the restroom, breathing through shame. She remembered nights studying by candlelight. Her mother's hands cracked from work. She wiped her face and returned upright, refusing collapse. Adrian watched from behind glass, pretending disinterest. He saw discipline where others saw weakness. During lunch, he summoned her without warning. "Why didn't you defend yourself?" he asked. Ifioma met his gaze. "Noise doesn't change truth," she said. Something in his chest tightened, unwanted and sharp. That afternoon, a luxury car arrived downstairs. His fiancée, Vanessa, stepped out, elegance sharpened into entitlement. She paused when she saw Ifioma at the desk. Her smile froze. "Who is that?" she asked softly. Adrian didn't answer immediately. The silence was an answer. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, measuring a threat she hadn't expected. As evening fell, Adrian dismissed staff early. Ifioma packed quietly, nerves buzzing. Vanessa brushed past her, perfume cold. "Be careful," she murmured. Ifioma said nothing. Upstairs, Adrian stood alone, realizing proximity had consequences. Downstairs, Ifioma stepped into dusk, sensing tomorrow would be crueler. Power had noticed her, so had its enemies, watching patiently. Neither slept that night. Adrian reviewed contracts, disturbed by a conscience he thought extinct. Ifioma counted ceiling cracks, wondering if courage was foolishness. Somewhere between them, decisions formed silently. Morning would demand allegiance, sacrifice, or surrender. Whatever came next would expose motives, redraw boundaries, and force truth into rooms built for lies. Both sensed the interview mistake had already become a chain binding futures beyond intention and rewriting lives without mercy or permission. Vanessa returned the next morning like a queen reclaiming territory. Her heels echoed through the corridor, precise and territorial. Ifioma felt it before she saw it, the shift in air, the tightening smiles. Vanessa stopped beside the desk, eyes flicking over worn shoes, plain blouse, careful posture. "So you're the surprise," Vanessa said lightly. "I'm temporary," Ifioma replied, standing. Vanessa smiled wider. "Everything starts that way." Inside his office, Adrian watched the exchange through glass. He told himself he felt nothing. Yet when Vanessa entered moments later, sliding into the chair opposite him, her tone sharpened. "You've hired a charity case," she said. "The board is confused." "She's competent," Adrian replied. Vanessa leaned forward. "Competent women don't sit outside your door without history." Adrian's eyes cooled. "Choose your words." Elsewhere, a trap was set. A report went missing. Whispers pointed immediately at Ifioma. By noon, security escorted her upstairs. Shame burned as she stood before Adrian and Vanessa, accusation heavy. "I didn't take anything," Ifioma said. Check the servers. Vanessa sighed theatrically. Of course. Adrian tapped the desk once. Run the logs. Minutes later, silence. The IT officer cleared his throat. The file was altered remotely. Not her access. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Adrian turned to Ifioma. You're dismissed, he said. Her heart dropped. Then he added, for the day. With pay. Shock rippled. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is absurd. It's final, Adrian said. That evening, Adrian called Ifioma back. Dinner, he said simply. We need to talk. She hesitated. People will misunderstand. They already do. At the restaurant, chandeliers glowed like secrets. Adrian listened as Ifioma spoke of surviving, of choosing dignity over hunger. He saw strength shaped by loss. When he walked her to the car, rain began softly. Vanessa watched from across the street, fury coiling. As Ifioma left, Adrian realized trust had crossed a line he could no longer redraw. Power was shifting, jealousy had sharpened, and somewhere between loyalty and longing, consequences gathered strength, waiting to strike first, hardest, and without apology. Adrian arrived early at the restaurant, irritation masked as patience. He told himself dinner was strategic, a necessary conversation to set boundaries. Yet when Ifioma walked in, rain still clinging to her hair, the room seemed to tilt. She wore a simple dress, nothing calculated, and somehow that unsettled him more than glamour ever had. They spoke carefully at first. Work, markets, silence. Then Ifioma asked quietly, why me? The question struck deeper than accusation. Adrian answered with practiced distance, but she interrupted. No, she said gently. The real reason. He looked away. Years of control resisted confession. Because you're honest, he finally said. And honesty is rare. She smiled sadly. Honesty is dangerous. The words lingered. Outside, a car idled too long. Neither noticed the lens watching from darkness. Adrian spoke of childhood neglect, of learning power as armor. Ifioma listened, eyes soft, refusing judgment. The space between them shrank without permission. When she reached for her bag, his hand brushed hers. Both froze. The contact was brief, electric, forbidden. I should go, she said, standing too fast. Yes, Adrian agreed, though his voice betrayed him. At the door, she turned. This can't happen again. He nodded, knowing it already had. The flash came suddenly. White light. A shutter click. Ifioma gasped. Adrian spun, anger erupting. The street was empty again, rain swallowing evidence. Panic flared. Someone took pictures. Ifioma whispered. Adrian's jaw hardened. I'll handle it. She shook her head. No, I will leave. You won't, he said, then softened. I won't let them destroy you. Her eyes filled. I never asked to be protected. You deserve it, he replied. She stepped back, distance restored by fear. As she disappeared into the night, Adrian realized a line had been crossed he could not erase. Power and care had collided, and consequences were already moving, sharpening their knives, preparing to turn curiosity into scandal and affection into war by morning. Vanessa reviewed the images that night, satisfaction cold and precise. The board sensed weakness, opportunity blooming. By dawn, rumors would spread faster than truth. Ifioma would wake hunted. Adrian would wake challenged. Love had no shelter here, only tests. The city waited, hungry for collapse, ready to crown villains and sacrifice innocence before morning decided winners and losers everywhere silently. Morning broke with headlines screaming scandal, though no names were printed yet. Ifioma saw whispers online and felt her chest tighten with dread. At the office, eyes followed her like knives, quiet and sharp. Vanessa arrived smiling, confidence polished, victory already imagined. The board summoned Adrian, demanding explanations before markets opened. Photos were slid across the table, carefully cropped, cruelly suggestive. They asked for discipline, sacrifice, removal of the distraction immediately. Adrian listened without blinking, anger cold and contained. He requested time, then called Ifioma into his office alone. She entered pale, already preparing resignation words she had practiced. Before she spoke, Adrian said quietly, "Stay." The words steadied her knees and broke something guarded inside him. He told her the board wanted her gone for image. She nodded, accepting pain like weather, familiar and unavoidable. "I will resign," she said, choosing dignity over protection. Adrian refused, voice firm, and announced responsibility was his. He canceled meetings, delayed markets, and faced the board again. Publicly, he defended her competence, condemning manipulation and malice. Privately, Vanessa issued an ultimatum: marriage or corporate war. Ifioma overheard fragments and realized love carried a price. That night, she packed a small bag, planning disappearance. Adrian stood alone in glass shadows, choosing loss over surrender. By dawn, press statements were drafted, threats whispered, alliances shifting. Ifioma paused at the door, hearing his message arrive. "Do not run," he said. "This fight is ours." She exhaled, fear battling hope, wondering what tomorrow demanded. The city buzzed, hungry for fallout, impatient for victims. Stocks wavered as rumors multiplied, testing Adrian's control. Employees chose sides. Loyalty weighed against survival instincts. Vanessa smiled for cameras, already rehearsing public heartbreak. Ifioma sat on her bed, phone glowing, resolve forming. She would not vanish without truth, nor borrow borrowed power. Adrian prepared statements that risked everything he had built. He remembered her question, "Why me?" echoing relentlessly. Outside, cameras gathered, sensing blood, sensing spectacle approaching. Inside, two choices hardened, collision inevitable, consequences imminent. Night crept slowly, dragging tension across every corridor. Ifioma closed her eyes, praying courage would hold. Adrian watched the skyline, preparing to burn bridges. Morning promised judgment, mercy withheld, truths finally demanded. When sunlight rose, neither would retreat, whatever the cost. The war for integrity began quietly, hearts exposed, futures trembling everywhere now. The press conference was announced before noon, vague and dangerous. Adrian stood behind the podium, cameras humming like insects. Everyone expected reconciliation, a polished lie, a restored engagement. Vanessa arrived smiling, dressed for victory, fingers already rehearsing tears. Ifioma watched from a hallway screen, heart hammering, breath shallow. She had packed to leave, but something anchored her feet. Adrian began calmly, thanking investors, acknowledging rumors, then paused. Silence stretched, sharp enough to wound. "I will not marry Vanessa," he said. The room exploded, gasps ricocheting, cameras flashing violently. Vanessa froze, shock cracking her practiced composure instantly. Adrian continued, voice steady, sacrificing comfort for truth publicly. He admitted loneliness, manipulation, and choosing integrity over convenience. Stocks dipped, board members cursed, alliances shattered in seconds. Outside, headlines rewrote futures with merciless speed. Ifioma's knees buckled, tears blurring the screen. He was burning his world for hers. Vanessa stormed out. Vows of destruction whispered into phones. Security tightened as protesters gathered, sensing corporate blood. Adrian left the stage without protection, walking alone. He found Ifioma waiting, trembling yet resolute. "I never asked for this," she said. "I know," he replied, "but I choose you." She stepped back, overwhelmed by cost and consequence. "Love built on ruin scares me," she confessed. Adrian nodded, accepting fear without defense. "Then let me ruin nothing else," he said softly. That night, he asked privately, without cameras or power. Not an order, not leverage, only vulnerability offered. "Marry me," he whispered, "not the CO." She wept, torn between hope and terror equally. Outside, the city roared, markets crashing, reputations bleeding. Inside, a fragile question hung unanswered between them. Ifioma asked for time, voice shaking but honest. Adrian agreed, surrendering control he once worshipped. As dawn approached, enemies regrouped, sharpening strategies ruthlessly. Love had detonated publicly, but survival demanded patience. The choice shocked the city, but the next would decide everything. Tomorrow would test resolve, loyalty, and the meaning of sacrifice itself. They stood separated by fear, united by fragile truth. Neither knew who would fall first. Enemies waited, promises trembled, and love, newly born, demanded courage greater than power ever required. Silence thickened, decisions loomed, and the city held its breath. As fate circled, patience would determine survival or destruction. Nothing would ever return to safety again. After this moment, innocence was lost. Iphioma did not sleep. The question Adrian asked kept echoing, louder than the city outside her window. By morning, fear had settled into resolve. She returned to the office not as a shield, but as herself. Adrian waited, unreadable. "I will step away if you ask," he said before she spoke. She shook her head. "I need truth." "Why me?" He exhaled slowly. "Because you didn't want anything from me." She laughed bitterly. "That's not enough." So he told her everything. About growing up unseen. About love used as leverage. About building an empire to never feel small again. "You walked in without fear of my throne," he said. "You saw the man." Pain softened her anger. Still, she stepped back. "Love shouldn't cost you everything." "It already has," he replied. Outside, the board convened in secret. Vanessa fed them poison, promising restoration if Adrian was removed. Shares slid. Lawyers sharpened language. Iphioma felt the weight of being the spark. "I won't be the reason you fall," she said. Adrian surprised her then. He knelt. No cameras. No witnesses. Just humility. "I'm already falling," he said. For the first time, willingly. Tears broke free. She had never seen power bow without demand. "I am afraid," she admitted. "So am I," he said. "Stay afraid with me." She asked for time again. This time he did not resist. "I'll wait," he said, "even if it costs me." That night, Iphioma returned home to pack nothing. Leaving would be easy. Staying would be war. By dawn, news broke. An emergency vote scheduled. Adrian's position threatened. He sent her one message. Not pressure. Not apology. "Whatever you choose, choose freely." She stared at the screen, heart racing. The city wanted a sacrifice. Power demanded blood. Love asked for courage. Iphioma stood, decision forming slowly, painfully. She would not run. Not again. If love was a fire, she would decide whether to step closer or walk away forever. The silence of morning felt heavier than poverty ever had. Choice meant ownership. Fear meant chains. She inhaled deeply, straightened her shoulders, and turned toward destiny. Uncertain but unashamed, knowing whatever followed would reveal who she truly was beyond circumstance, power, or mercy. The answer would arrive soon, carried by consequence, resolve, and the courage to love without escape alone. Vanessa moved first. By noon, her interview aired everywhere, voice trembling, story polished. She spoke of betrayal, of trust broken, of a naive assistant who climbed too fast. Names were omitted, damage complete. Commentators filled gaps with cruelty. Iphioma watched from a cafe, hands shaking around a chipped cup. Messages flooded in, strangers judging, friends warning, threats whispering. Her face appeared online, tagged, dissected. Gold digger, opportunist, lie, truth drowned. Adrian resigned that afternoon. Not quietly. He released a statement accepting responsibility, condemning manipulation, refusing to sacrifice an innocent. Markets plunged. The board celebrated privately. Power reclaimed its throne. He searched for Iphioma across the city, phone unanswered. She ran, not from love, but from harm following her steps. At a bus station, exhaustion won. She sat, head spinning, world tilting. A woman recognized her, hissed an insult, shoved her shoulder. Panic surged. The room blurred. Iphioma collapsed. Adrian arrived minutes later, breath ragged, fear naked. He gathered her, ignoring cameras, shouting for help. In the ambulance, he held her hand, whispering apologies she tried to silence. At the clinic, Doctor spoke softly. Stress. Dehydration. Nothing fatal. Yet something inside, both had cracked. When she woke, Adrian sat nearby, suit gone, eyes red. I lost the company, he said simply. She cried. I ruined you. No, he said. I chose. Outside, reporters waited, vultures patient. Vanessa released another statement, victorious. But Adrian smiled faintly. I transferred my shares weeks ago, he told Ifioma. To a trust. For education. For people like you. Shock stilled her tears. He had planned freedom before love demanded it. As night fell, the city roared with judgment. Inside the small room, silence healed slowly. Ifioma squeezed his hand. Running had ended. War had changed shape. Tomorrow would bring new attacks, new truths. For now, two hearts breathed together, stripped of armor, knowing the enemy underestimated resilience born from loss, honesty, and the stubborn refusal to disappear. Morning would test them again, but tonight they rested, wounded yet awake. Love had survived exposure, not by hiding, but by standing. Whatever followed, courtrooms, headlines, exile, they would answer together, choosing truth over safety, tenderness over power, and hope over fear, even when the cost demanded everything they still possessed. Their silence promised endurance beyond applause, beyond loss, beyond the fragile mercy of crowds, watching without compassion. Morning light crept through the clinic blinds, pale and unforgiving. Ifioma woke to quiet beeping and the weight of yesterday pressing her chest. Adrian stood by the window, shoulders squared, eyes softer than she had ever seen. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. He turned. Because I didn't want power to touch us again. She sat up slowly. You gave up everything. I gave up noise, he said. I kept myself. They talked until fear loosened its grip. Adrian spoke of rebuilding without titles, of learning to listen. Ifioma spoke of shame that lingered, of strength earned too young. Words stitched wounds neither knew were open. A lawyer arrived with papers. The board had filed injunctions, frozen accounts, threatened character assassination. Adrian skimmed, calm settling like armor. We'll respond, he said, in daylight. Ifioma shook her head. They will never stop. They will, he replied, when truth costs them more than lies. Outside, cameras waited. Inside, nurses moved gently. The world felt divided by glass. Later, Adrian wheeled her to the exit himself. Reporters surged. He raised a hand, not to command, but to protect. No statements today, he said. We're choosing health. Someone shouted. Was she worth it? Adrian didn't hesitate. Yes. The word landed, simple and irreversible. They drove without destination, city blurring. At a quiet park, Ifioma breathed freely for the first time in days. I'm still afraid, she admitted. So am I, he said. But fear isn't the boss anymore. He told her about the trust, the schools planned, the exit he'd prepared long before love arrived. She realized he had been running too, just in better shoes. At dusk, a call came. An emergency injunction denied. A crack in the wall. Adrian smiled, tired but real. Ifioma took his hand. When ice melts, she said, it becomes water. And water moves, he answered. Night settled. Tomorrow promised courtrooms and cruelty. Tonight promised rest, earned honestly. They sat together, watching the city breathe, knowing survival required patience, courage, and the daily choice to remain human when power tempted them to freeze again. Hope flickered quietly, unannounced yet stubborn, insisting tomorrow could be kinder if they defended truth together, step by step, without masks, without shortcuts, and without surrendering compassion to the cruelty waiting beyond dawn for them both always forward. Morning arrived with legal envelopes and unexpected calm. Adrian brewed coffee in a borrowed kitchen, sleeves rolled, learning small rituals he'd ignored for years. Ifioma watched him, surprised how peace could coexist with ruin. The hearing was brief and brutal. Motions denied, smears dismissed. The judge warned against intimidation. Outside, cameras hunted reactions. Adrian said nothing. Silence, he learned, could be stronger than statements. Vanessa appeared once, escorted, eyes glittering. She announced heartbreak, then vanished. The city grew bored. Scandals need oxygen. Truth stars them slowly. By afternoon, news broke of the trust's first grants. Schools named, clinics funded, faces replaced headlines. The board issued a curt note. Separation finalized. Adrian smiled, unburdened. I think they expected me to beg, he said. They don't know how you grew up, Ifeoma replied. A package arrived, a simple ring, unremarkable, honest. No note. Adrian paled. I never sent that. Ifeoma opened it. Inside lay a card from his former assistant, dismissed years ago. Thank you for changing. Happiness startled them both. They walked at dusk unnoticed. Adrian stopped near a quiet chapel. We don't need spectacle, he said. We need shelter. She nodded, heart steady. Tomorrow. Tonight, he offered, unsure. They called two friends. A clerk. No flowers. No press. The officiant spoke softly about choices repeated daily. Ifeoma said vows without trembling. Adrian answered without armor. Outside, rain blessed the pavement. A photographer raised a camera, hesitated, lowered it. Respect surprised the city. They ate street food afterward, laughing at grease and freedom. Adrian paid with cash, grinning. Ifeoma teased him for the first time. A final message buzzed his phone. Assets released, countersuit withdrawn. Peace, provisional but real. As night settled, Ifeoma leaned against him. I belong, she said, testing the word. You always did, he answered. The wedding wasn't planned, but it was chosen. And in choosing each other without crowns or cages, they discovered wealth measured not by holdings lost or kept, but by courage practiced daily, together, unafraid of tomorrow, committed to ordinary love, which would now carry them forward wherever consequence followed next. Morning arrived quietly, without headlines or alarms. Ifeoma woke to sunlight and the certainty that fear no longer owned her breath. Adrian brewed tea, humming badly, learning joy in small incompetence. They shared breakfast, unhurried, ordinary, chosen. The city adjusted. Rumors faded. New stories took their place. Children filled classrooms, funded by a quiet trust. Clinics opened doors earlier. Goodness rarely trended, yet endured. They visited the tower once, not to reclaim, but to release. Security nodded respectfully. Former colleagues watched with curiosity, then relief. Adrian thanked them sincerely. Ifeoma bowed her head, dignity intact. Outside, a young woman approached, clutching a folder. Wrong interview, she whispered, smiling. Ifeoma laughed softly, recognizing destiny's humor. She offered directions, not rescue. At home, letters arrived from strangers healed by the trust. Adrian read them slowly, humbled. This is the work, he said, not power. They build a life with rules. Speak truth early, eat together, leave rooms kinder. When fear resurfaced, they named it, then moved. Vanessa's name disappeared. Not erased, simply finished. The board rebuilt. Market stabilized. Time, patient and impartial, did its work. On a Sunday, they hosted a small gathering. Friends, neighbors, laughter. No cameras, no speeches, just presence. Ifeoma wore confidence like skin. Adrian wore humility like weather. As dusk settled, they walked hand in hand. What did love give you? Ifeoma asked. Permission, Adrian answered. To be human. And take, she pressed. Nothing I needed, he said. They paused beneath a streetlight. Ifeoma smiled, remembering the wrong door. I walked into destiny, she said. You chose it, he replied. The moral arrived gently. Love does not elevate status, it reveals worth. Power bends. Ice melts. Courage remains. They turned toward home, certain and unfinished, ready for ordinary days that would test them more honestly than spectacle ever could, carrying forward the quiet promise that the girl who entered by mistake became a woman by choice, and a life was built the same way. They understood endings were beginnings disguised. Each morning would ask courage again. Each evening would reward patience. Together they would fail, forgive, learn, and choose. Love would remain work, daily and deliberate, stronger than titles, louder than rumors, generous enough to make room for others, always without fear, without hurry, without masks, grounded, grateful, enduring for all time.